if I had a thought in my mind that I wanted to share with Kat, brain, mouth, out to her instantly. I wasn't aware of if she was ready to hear it, if she had just gotten home from work and was frazzled. If I had a thought, I would call her if she wasn't home. Hey, let's talk about this thing. Now I'm like, let me journal it. Let me think about it. Maybe I'm going to sleep on it, look at it the next day, see if she is available, kind of get her consent to talk to her about it, and share it with her.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult the medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 271. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an interview with EJ and Kat, who were originally on our podcast back on episode 19. So in the early days, summer of 2018, we talked to them.
Yeah, so it's been almost 5 years. We'll call it 5. We'll round up to 5. It sounds more dramatic.
4.5, yeah.
Since we last talked to them. And so this conversation, you don't need to have listened to episode 19 in order to get a ton out of this conversation. We've determined you could either listen to this one first and then go back and listen, or you can listen to that one and then come to this one.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. It is an amazing conversation, and we're super excited to
talk to them. Yeah, I was just going to say, as you can imagine, a lot has happened. I mean, think about where the world was in 2018 versus now, and what has happened between then.
But it's not then.
No.
It's currently now.
It's currently now.
So part of what we talk about is their transition from swinging to polyamory, and not that maybe one of those has been completely eliminated, but it's a great conversation about that transition. We also talk a lot about the impact that the pandemic did have on their relationship. We talk about boundaries. We talk about bandwidth. We talk about ask culture and guest culture. Spontaneous desire, responsive. We talk about a lot of stuff. You know why?
Because they're awesome.
That too. Also, as EJ talks about, he's made a huge career shift in the last 5 years and is now a licensed master social worker and does therapy and coaching in the relationships and non-monogamy and all of that. Mm-hmm. And he references some workshops that Emma and I attended. Well, one workshop that we've attended so far.
Yes. And there's more coming.
There are. So the workshop that we attended, there's links in the show notes. You can get there anyway. It's not an affiliate link. We're not being paid to promote this, but we loved the workshop. It was excellent. And it was co-hosted by another former guest.
Yes.
From episode 8.
Yes.
Formerly known as Samantha, currently known as Rachel.
Yes.
And so, again, also an incredible episode and an incredible human and incredible work that they're doing.
Yeah, and just a quick note, the upcoming workshops are on February 11th, 2023. And these are intimacy workshops, by the way.
Yes.
And April 1st. So more information, links in the show notes. And we also talk about it in this episode some more. But we just wanted to throw those dates out there so you had them in the back of your mind too.
Yeah. So again, a wonderful conversation with these two. Thank you to both of them for coming on and sharing everything. Links to everything that we talk about will be in the podcast show notes on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. And for anybody who is a premium subscriber, we're going to jump right into the conversation right meow. Mm-hmm. And for the rest of you, we've got some fun announcements.
First up, if you're
Hold on, keep them extra fun. I promise
extra fun. Okay,
I promise
extra fun.
Make them fun.
I don't know how to make the premium subscription announcement fun. Anyway, if you're not familiar with a premium subscription, you can go sign up. It is super fun to sign up, like the process, right? Like it's not bad.
I don't know. What's the process?
Go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the links on our homepage. You get to skip these announcements up front, but don't worry, you still get important community dates and announcements at the end.
I'm checking the fun meter. That was a fun meter of 2.
Yeah, I didn't nail it too much. Okay, next up.
Well, the process itself, it wasn't you.
Yeah, the process is just, it's just like a sign-up form.
It would have been a fun meter 0 if you hadn't made it so fun.
The other
you brought it from a 0 to a 2. Okay, that's good. Amazing.
The other fun part is that it does support the show, and we appreciate it very much.
That is true.
Next up, we have a virtual meet and greet tomorrow. That is January 19th, 2023. We have one in the evening, Thursday evening. Well, depending what time zone you're in. It's our Thursday evening.
On the West Coast.
On the West Coast in the United States. But it's January 19th. These are super fun. To sign up, go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community events tab.
Fun meter, 12.
Well, yes, for the event itself.
Correct. The announcement got a 7.
Okay, nail it.
All right. Next up.
Your turn.
No.
Okay, next up. If you're out there looking, well, I should rephrase. The meet and greets, just to be extra super clear, the meet and greets, virtual meet and greets that we have on January 19th, and we'll also have one in February, these are open to anyone. You just must be open-minded and respectful. Outside of that, we also have a community, an online community that we have been growing. We are so grateful for everyone who is part of this amazing community. We have an in-person community-only event coming up on January 28th, the weekend of January 28th in a few weeks in the San Francisco Bay Area. If you're in the area or you want to come travel, we would love to see you. More information is available in the community, but we have lots of fun things planned and we would love to see you there. So go sign up. Find out more on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community tab. And by the way, the community itself is only $5 a month. With that, you get access to our online virtual platform. It's a lot of ongoing chats, lots of different subjects. You get monthly Q&As and a monthly men's group and a women's group.
Yeah, so it's not just in person. If you join and you can't make the in-person event, there is tons of virtual funness.
And access.
Yeah, fun level 27,000.
Yes.
And no excuses not to come in person. We have somebody flying all the way from Shanghai.
Yeah, so pretty much you can't beat that.
So your excuses just became invalid. Anyway, we still love you, and we would love to have you join the community. We'll hope to see you there. Again, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the community tab, and you will learn everything you need to know how to join, and we would love to have you.
Yes.
The last thing, also well done on that with the fun meter, was just through the roof.
Nailed it.
Yeah. The last thing we have to talk about is actually going to blow the fun meter apart.
Because what's more fun than getting tested for STIs?
I have not found anything in my life, Emma, especially when I use the service stdcheck.com, which is the way that you and I both get tested because it's so fucking fun.
Oh, yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not even worried. We just do it because it's fun. But anyway, the whole point is it's fast, it's easy, it is fun, and you save $10 if you use the links on our website, and you support the show financially, bringing the cost of your test and fun down to $129, and you get your results usually in about 24 to 48 hours, texted to you, and then you go to your online portal, and right there you can show them to anyone and everybody that you want to go and have fun with.
Yes.
So the theme of today's intro is fun. That was a fun meter of 77,400.
Wow, that beat out everything else.
That's why I said it was going to happen.
Wow.
It's easy when you judge yourself.
Oh, yeah, you can just make up numbers.
Skew the numbers.
Yeah. I mean, STIs testing is super, super freaking important.
And fun.
And fun.
And the last thing you can do is reach out to us at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. You click on the Contact Us tab, and you can send us a fun voicemail or a fun email, and we will send you a fun reply back.
Yes.
And we will let you judge the funness meter of those events.
Yes.
All right. Activities.
And with that,
let's go talk to
EJ and Kat.
Let's go.
Welcome back to the podcast, Kat and EJ. We're so excited for an update. We talked to you back way at the beginning of our podcast, episode 19. It's been quite some time, and we can't wait to dig into everything. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us again.
Yes, this is exciting. Thank you.
Yeah, we're pumped. This is, I think, the record of largest gap between first episode and follow-up episode. So I'm sure nothing has happened, but do you mind giving us a little bit of flavor of what were Kat and EJ's lives like when we recorded in the spring of 2018?
Wow.
Maybe where was the journey up till that point? And yeah. I know we all, spoiler alert, we all listened to the episode, so we all kind of remember.
When I listened to it, I was like, oh, we sound so young and fresh and a little naive still. You know, there's been some world changing events in between.
A few.
But yeah, I just remember thinking, oh, how cute.
Yeah, I know. For me, when I listened to it again, I'm like, okay, there was a little bit of a spoiler alert where we kind of hinted at my age. And so I feel that I'm in a different space now from being in my early 40s when we did the math in the last episode to, yeah, I am now putting my feet into entering the late 40s. And so hearing that, going, oh, yeah, I agree with myself back then. But the stuff I was agreeing back then was like abstract. This sounds good. Now I've kind of lived it in that last 4.5 years and some adjustments, some global pandemics in between. So I remember seeing the date that it was posted and forgetting that, oh yeah, we did record it just a little bit before that. So for me, I know a big shift was when we recorded that, I was starting to look on the horizon of, hey, I'm about to retire from a 20-year career that defined my 20s and 30s. And I was figuring out what I was going to do, but it hadn't happened yet. And so in these 4.5 years since, I have now been fully immersed in an entirely new career, which has impacted how I see non-monogamy, but I think in a better way and in a way that kind of validates some of the stuff we talked about.
Yeah, and definitely excited to talk about that and kind of weave it in. I know we'll get into it in a bit because it's exciting, and we were on your workshop this past weekend, so
Yeah.
we have a bit of a flavor of it. I would say on our end, it was really cringeworthy to go back and listen to ourselves 4 years ago, and we're like, well, we had to start somewhere. But even what you just brought up, like I remember listening to me like trying to guess your age, and I'm like, what was I doing? So anyway, yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up this morning, EJ. Thank you. I needed that.
I embrace it now. My age.
Excellent.
When we did this originally, I wasn't even 40 yet. So to go from my 30s to my 40s, there's been some changes there as well, too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to hear about them all. And so backing up, when we last recorded, you were a couple of years into a transition from more of a casual swinging dynamic to deeper connections in polyamory. Do you mind talking a little bit, just high level, maybe over a couple of minutes, what that journey, how you two got even into non-monogamy, got to that transition point and coming out of that transition point, and maybe we can kind of pick up from there. And Emma's about to say something.
I'm just going to add like kind of just a relationship overview of like how long you've been together type thing would be helpful too, just in case anyone hasn't listened to that episode 19.
We are about to celebrate our 19th wedding anniversary.
But we were together for 2 years before that.
Yes.
Probably one of the world's fastest engagements, proposal, engagement, marriage, same day.
Yeah. I had a little tiny window of like, I had a few days to go visit her because there were a lot of times where we were like living kind of long distance. And I was like, I'm going to take a chance. I think she's going to say yes. And so because I was only going to be in San Francisco for like 3 days for us to visit each other, I'm like, I'm going to book a little appointment slot at San Francisco City Hall. So if she says yes, I'm like, well, guess what? You know, let's make this happen. And she said yes and yes. And there was a beautiful whirlwind. And to date how far back this was, there was a big party at San Francisco City Hall where they pumped in snow covering all around the outside of San Francisco City Hall for a party for the incoming brand new mayor, Gavin Newsom.
Wow.
And we're like, oh, yay, look, they're decorating for our little...
It was really pretty.
Yeah.
Like, big trees and everything.
Yeah.
So it was really nice.
And I had just proposed to her hours earlier at Golden Gate Park. So that's just a little bit about us reflecting, because I know...
But I think at that point we'd already gone to some swinging events.
Yeah.
So that was something we were already involved with when we got married.
Yes. Yeah. Which, reflecting on that story, I told her about, hey, when you've met me, that these are some of the things I do. What are your thoughts? And she's like, okay, interesting. And then she dove into it. And at that point, we hadn't quite hit a burnout yet. that was probably still a couple years away. But but prior to that, she had met a guy who already had about 5 years experience, from literally 20 years old until she met me in my mid 20s. And I also realize now, like we joked in the last episode 4.5 years ago, yep, I'm at the age now of the couple who are like, hey, EJ, you want to go to this party? And I'm like, sure.
I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh man, they were probably only in their 30s. The people that you're like, oh, they're so much older than me.
Yeah, the older couple who invited you out.
Mark's older.
Mm-hmm.
They were probably only in their like early to mid late 30s, somewhere in there. And now we'd be like, oh, look how young and cute they are.
Yeah. But I definitely look back at 2015, 2016, and then into 2017 as a lot of compressed learning as we went. And even 2018 and 2019 were still learning, but it was a different kind of learning.
Yeah, like 2015 is when we transitioned from doing purely swinging to more poly life for ourselves.
Yeah.
And then
it was more separate rather than together.
About 3 years in.
Yeah. And then I would say 2018 and 2019 were learning how to just have this depth of a relationship, multiple relationships, where the relationships got deeper and deeper. And then the pandemic came, and then there was a whole other lesson of life, not just about non-monogamy. And then I would say this year has been slowly learning how to come back out of it, not just non-monogamy, life in general, at maybe some kind of new measured pace. So, yeah, I think that's the timeline.
Yeah, I would say that between the two of us, you've probably had a bigger growth. I've been kind of level and haven't really changed much. But EJ really has.
Talking about the last since we last talked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially since the pandemic. I think the pandemic really changed a lot of things in his mind for himself. And then he had to do some more adjusting when things started coming back to normal.
Yeah, you're right. I guess there would be 3 phases. I'm in a new career after 20 years of being indoctrinated into a certain kind of life professionally. Then the pandemic, which feels like a blur of over 2 years. And then now this third phase of, okay, where am I now that things are kind of quasi coming back to normal this last year for me?
Yeah. Totally. Well, I'd love to maybe dig in as a starting point, picking up almost the baton where we left. And you just kind of touched on, like, it was figuring out how to have deeper and deeper connections. And then they just kind of kept getting deeper. And I think that's something, we've transitioned ourselves in the last 4 years into a polyamorous dynamic as well. So we got to do that through the pandemic. That was spectacular. And so I guess the thought there is just having a little different frame of mind for ourselves, understanding that transition of going deeper and deeper and deeper into a connection, that's a really interesting thing to learn how to balance with your existing partnership, because you're giving more and more and more of your time and energy. And we can all say, well, our hearts just grow and expand, and we have more love. And we don't love one son better than our other son, or one grandparent more than another grandparent, but maybe sometimes. But generally speaking, we expand, but we don't expand the amount of time we have in the day. So how did that experience go for the two of you as you grew through that, going deeper and deeper and deeper, and maintaining your marriage?
So I think we touched on it with the therapy the last time, that we didn't really stop doing. It's still something we're consistently doing. That's been super helpful. But I think when we last talked, I just started seeing a new guy. So it wasn't really an in-depth thing. And I'm still seeing him now. So it became more of an in-depth thing as time went on. But it definitely, I always like to joke that I'm really shallow, that I don't really get deep into things. So when it does happen, it's unexpected and a little deeper than I'm than I prepared myself for. But with EJ, we had a little bit of a rough 2019. Even with therapy, it was everything was kind of coming to a head, and then 2020 happened, and it really made us reevaluate a lot of our own selves. I was having a really rough time, and I was kind of taking it out on him, unrelated to poly, but it did affect our lives and our dating and everything. So I'm much better now. But it did right before the pandemic happened. Things were kind of messy. So
Yeah, the pandemic became this forcing function that I guess made us make lemonade out of the lemons that were already existing, and then the lemons that the pandemic brought us. We kind of came closer together, and it really just forced us to have more time. There was a lot less things. There were a lot less things we could do. There were just a lot. So in a way, those things that maybe I wouldn't call them distractions, but they just weren't available for us anymore. All these events, all these other things we were joyfully doing, it forced us to have just a little bit more moment of self-reflection or reflection on our relationship. And I think we came out of it a little bit better. And I feel that if there wasn't a pandemic, there's a chance where we would have been slower in focusing in on some of the things that we needed to translate with each other.
We're letting ourselves get distracted by the things instead of focusing on each other.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that process? Or go for it. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, I was going to say is that for me, I would say I dove so into understanding, absorbing the concepts that came with my new career as a clinical social worker that I almost needed the pandemic, and then working in the pandemic for that next year or two to kind of understand the things that were abstract concepts when we had our last podcast. I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But now I understand it more. And I think one of the big things for me is I remember hearing in our podcast, we're like, oh yeah, I think we call them boundaries. I remember kind of laughing that we were like trying to think of what the word was. And now it's like probably a word that is first month of almost all of my clients were going over their boundaries. And one of the biggest boundaries that's difficult, monogamous or non-monogamous, is time boundaries. And the thing that I mentioned, I'm like, don't feel bad if you don't have healthy time boundaries. Healthy time boundaries are difficult. To have this like perfectly color-coded, balanced Google Calendar where you're giving enough time to sleep, enough time to yourself, enough time to your kids or your pets or your partner, enough time to work. That's really hard. And a lot of us have porous boundaries. We can't say no to our boss. We can't say no to our partner. We can't say no to our kids or whatever it is. And we're like left on the short end of the stick. But I also have seen it the other way around where we are the kid in the candy store for a moment and we might have rigid boundaries. Ooh, I'm all excited. I'm doing this. And then somebody else is left with the short end of the stick, whether it's another partner or our own sleep or whatever it is. And so I think I was able to understand as we entered the pandemic and during the pandemic, the things that I wasn't taking into account that are boundary pullers. And so, for example, not every relationship is the same. Not every person is the same. Some dynamics are going to pull bandwidth more and we don't notice it. Or a relationship starts a certain way and maybe it's kind of chill, not a whole lot of a bandwidth pull, or it's like a bandwidth increaser. It's like giving you energy. And then over time, things change about what people need in the relationship. And I was able to kind of realize that. And like for me, from 2015, when we started transitioning into polyamory, until 2018, 2019, I, for example, didn't have a lot of bandwidth pull from my work, my profession. I was kind of in this like retirement mode. Hey, I'm about to retire. Don't got a whole lot to do. And then all of a sudden, I like, oh, now I'm doing a job I love, but a job that is definitely pulling my bandwidth. it was a new partner. And so I think understanding we have a lot of other things in our life that our partners taking from our bandwidth. And I didn't understand that as clearly back in 2018. And so that really impacts. And I think I can give more informed consent to somebody going, hey, this is how much energy I've got to give to you, or how much energy are you looking for in a connection with somebody, so we can see if we're in a fit. And that probably wasn't even on my radar in 2016, 2017. And so sometimes that created connections that weren't sustainable for both people's available bandwidth.
Well, and going back to boundaries, I think my definition of what a boundary has changed, because back then, I think we felt more like boundaries were rules for our partner. But really a boundary is rules I have for myself that I will say, this is what I'm comfortable with. And if you're not comfortable with, I understand that. But that's something I need to work on more than something that I need you to do to fix because I'm uncomfortable. So that definitely wasn't something I really understood 4 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a super hard concept, because I think a lot of times people hear the way that we try to describe boundaries is and you kind of just said it too, is a boundary is something that you place on yourself, not something you place on somebody else. So I don't stay up past 9 p.m. on weeknights, right? So you can try and you can push on me, but I'm not going to do that. And then if you are constantly like running up against that boundary, right, that gives me something to question, like why can't you respect this thing that I've told you I need this much sleep, and that means I need to go to bed at this time. And if this other person's like, well, I want to stay up till 11 every night and watch this show with you. Okay, well, if that's a need you have and my need is this, like maybe we aren't a good fit right now in this phase of our lives. And it almost can come across as an ultimatum, but it's really just you saying like, no, this is what I need for me to protect me. And sure, there's some flex here and there, but largely this is what I'm doing. And I'm not saying you have to go to bed at 9. I'm saying I'm going to bed at 9, and you can do whatever you want, but it's not going to be with me unless it's laying next to me in bed while I'm asleep at 9:30.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not something that made sense to me 4 years ago.
And
because I think I was still learning a lot about myself.
And I think I wouldn't say it's a problem, but in 2015, 2016, I didn't see it as a problem to stretch my boundaries to accommodate somebody. And sometimes that's still fine. But now I think I understand my like right and left limits a bit more. So like, for example, I'm just a kind of a person who likes my time a little bit more structured. Well, a little bit of spontaneity is okay, but not really my thing. So my preference is, hey, partner, I kind of would like us to confirm what our plans might be by X amount of time. Totally valid if I meet somebody who goes, you know what, I don't really know what I want to do this weekend until like Friday afternoon. That's just me. I'm like, that's cool. Our boundaries might be kind of different here. So we might only fit in this kind of context. Back in the day, I would have been, okay, that's fine. And over time, that probably would have created some strain because I wasn't hearing or, respecting my own boundaries.
Yeah. And in some ways, those types of situations can create resentment too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, and I think that's a great example because it's a little, I guess maybe a little more practical than the one I said earlier. But I think what's interesting there is you can, like, to find a happy medium would be maybe something like, well, okay, I hear you. It'd be really great if we could have that plan by Wednesday. Mm-hmm. If we can't have it by like maybe Thursday, I might make plans for this weekend. And so you're welcome to wait until Friday afternoon, but understand that I might be busy at that point because for whatever reason, I like to have my plans shored up by Thursday. So if we could do it Wednesday, great. If it's not till Friday, great. But understand that when you ask, I might not be available anymore.
Exactly. And I think I am doing better now, especially these last few years, at realizing that's not a personal slight for either of us. Mm-hmm. We just see XYZ a little differently. And so, for example, I know with Kat, there was probably times 3-5 years ago where if our boundary didn't match, I wouldn't like slow down mentally to think about it, and I'd take it personally. And so now I'm kind of like, okay, like we don't always have to see a thing the same, as long as we're slowing down enough to understand that and not personalize a boundary mismatch, so to speak.
Right. And so I still have the partner that I've been seeing for the last 4 years, but I just recently kind of started seeing someone else, and they are really bad with time management. It's more of a, hey, it's 8:00 on a Friday. Are you busy? Yes, usually I am busy on.
Yeah.
By that time on 8:00 on a Friday, if it's either that or I'm going to bed. So, it's a self-limiting kind of arrangement, so it's probably not going to go in the same direction that my other partner has, where we see each other pretty consistently once a week, same day every week. It's a set kind of it's a set appointment we have with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, which I think when life is super busy is reasonable, right? Like you said, like I might be available on Friday night at 8:00, but like you're playing the lottery at that point,
right.
and that's okay. But understand that I'm not just gonna remember like, well, probably gonna get a text at 8:00 on Friday, so I'm just gonna keep all of Friday evening open for this person. And I'm going to throw away my ability to do anything for myself because they might text me or they might not. And so it's not really fair for you to clear your schedule. And I don't know if fair is the right word, but if that's not something you want to do, then you don't need to clear your schedule just to hold it open for that person who's not wanting to sort of meet you and plan in the way that like works for you.
Yeah.
Another thing when I was listening to our interview from 2018 was that some of the things we were saying, we also didn't have the language we have now. So there were times where Kat was saying something, I'm like, she's talking about guest culture. She's talking about ask culture, which was something that we went over in the workshop. So I'm thinking like, oh, I just remember talking about this in that workshop on Saturday. And that is one thing that we both understand in each other and don't take personally. Sometimes we will have hiccups because I am very ask culture.
And I was raised very guest culture. Very, 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 very passive aggressive. Nothing is direct. It's all hinted at kind of way I was raised. So it's been a long road for me to try to meet him because it's healthier for me to go that direction than for him to try to come to my direction.
And for me to slow down and remember, sometimes I am unintentionally steamrolling or putting somebody in a corner by what I think is, hey, I'm just asking you something, not realizing, oh, I feel really uncomfortable if I say no, so I better say yes. Because that doesn't even register in my radar for me. So
because you would never do that. You would never just say yes because someone's asking you. You would definitely have to think about it before you said yes and not worry about disappointing the other person.
I'm so comfortable saying no that I forget that is something that's really uncomfortable for people. And
for sure,
when we did our podcast 4 or 5 years ago, I kind of understood it abstractly, but I understand it much more. I think we both understand it in each other much more now than we did 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. Do you mind just really quickly describing the ask and guess culture so that our listeners can understand?
Even with like a quick example would be probably the easiest.
So an ask culture person, let's say they need to borrow $10 from somebody. They might go up to another ask culture person and say, hey, I lost my wallet and I have to go get this thing. Can I borrow $10? And if the other person says, no, I don't got it, they're like, okay, cool, no problem. But if they go to a guest person, the guest person might give it to them even if they don't have it because they might feel like they're kind of put on the spot. Or a guest culture person, if they need to borrow the $10, instead of asking directly, it might hint around it. Oh yeah, so I lost my wallet the other day. I gotta go. pay for this thing, and they're not going to ask. They're hoping the other person reads the cues, and
offers.
And if they go, and the ask culture person might think, okay, that's a bummer. They're not asking me for anything. Okay, man, that's a bummer, and walk away. And the guest culture person might go, oh gosh, I guess they don't want to lend me the money, and I feel bad about it. Whereas another guest culture person who can read their cues already knows, they're giving me the subtle hints and cues for the ask. And so that was kind of a bad example. An example, I'll share one more example really quick, is asking for a ride to the airport. Somebody might go, yeah, so I got to go to the airport on Sunday. I got to be there by this certain time. And the person go, oh, cool, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to Miami. Okay, have a great trip. And not realize that they were hinting at it. Whereas the guest ask culture person might go, hey, I need to be at the airport by 10 o'clock on Saturday. Could you give me a ride? It just be really straightforward. Neither way is right or wrong. A lot of times it's how we're programmed, how we grow up. And an ask culture person is usually black and white. You get it. And hopefully, ask culture people don't have an emotional attachment to the outcome. You can't give me a ride? No problem. Guest culture has so many different nuances. You have to read so many different cues that even two guest culture people could be on different pages. And you throw that into multiple relationships and polycules, you're gonna have misfires. I see it all the time. So that's kind of
luckily we don't see it in our relationship.
I was like, we live that all of the time, I feel like, and talk to people all of the time about it.
Yeah, this is one, and I don't know that this is a healthy approach, but it's fun sometimes, which I'll know exactly what she's trying to ask for, but I refuse to do it until she asks for it, because she'll start are you busy this afternoon?
I'm very much like Kat.
Am I busy this afternoon? Yes. Oh. And then it's sorry, what did you want? You wanted something, and you, instead of just asking for the thing, we play 20 questions. And that's what I'll get to a point. Sometimes I'm like, why are we playing 20 questions? What's the thing you're actually asking for? Oh, well, I was just asking if you could bring me a seltzer water out of the fridge. I'm like, right. You could be halfway done drinking that by now if we had just asked for it, 7 minutes ago and we started the game. But we're learning, and we're figuring it out too. And it's not something that no one ever teaches you this shit.
No.
It is something that I would say I didn't really understand how to have a radar about it with a connection. I would say now, in this last year or two, that is almost something that's would be part of the initial getting to know somebody, figuring out what is their culture. I don't want to change them to an asker, but I understand if they are a guesser, I might want to give them options when I ask a question instead of a yes or no, to pull out of where they're coming from. And so, for example, a lot of my clients say when it comes to sex, I am really guest culture and I get really uncomfortable if somebody's really direct with me. Or on the flip side, they might be very ask culture in this one area where they're like, hey, I've had some past trauma. I really need you to be clear and direct with me and tell me exactly what you want, or I'm going to get really anxious of the unknown coming up. So it can really vary. I have a lot of people who are like, I'm gung-ho, ask direct at work and everywhere. Oh, but when it comes to the bedroom, I switch gears here. So I think it helps to learn that about people early on, so you know kind of what you're investing in each other. Your relationship's going to have more depth.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of online quizzes, or online quizzes to figure out what you are, or is it just something that you kind of know about yourself?
I think it really depends on the context, because some people can be asked in some relationships and guess in others. So I really think it's just being intentional, slowing down, I would say.
Because I love doing those online quizzes and figuring things out about myself.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those where you can just ask your partner, hey.
Guest culture and ask culture are both fine.
And I want to make that clear too.
Navigate them.
This is too on me, right? As the asker, or I'm more of the asker versus the guesser too. I can translate a lot of the things, and I can see when she's going down this path of, I'll get 4 or 5 questions about something, and I'm like, I really, at this point, I do help out. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, what are you trying to get at? Because I can see you're stuck and you're, for whatever reason, you don't want to ask for the thing. So what are we doing? And we can usually cut through a lot of that. And some days I'm feeling playful and I'm like, nah, I'm just going to make her work for it because, we'll do it that way today. So, but it's not always on her, right? I also have to recognize that me being direct, like you said, can be off-putting. And so, meeting each other in the middle is often where we do land, but can still have fun with it.
I think the topic can be a good playful discussion when both partners are curious and calm and rested and can have that dialogue, not in the middle of a conflict.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I know the big thing, the other thing that I've heard people say before is that an ass culture person sometimes can see guest culture as, why are they being so shady? And they take it personal and they like, why can't they just come direct and tell me? And then the guest culture people have told me, hey, that ass culture person seems like a bully and so pushy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just both being calm and understanding the differences and not personalizing it. And that's one thing that I think I've gotten better at, is not personalizing it and realizing, hey,
mm-hmm.
we just have different language that we're using here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and I think for me, the big realization was just that other people do things differently than me. And I think that's a big one, because I would get frustrated, like, why can't you just ask? And it's like, well, okay, I get it. We just do it different. And that's given me a lot of like ability to pause and not get as frustrated about it. To your point though, if you're in the middle of something heated or stuff's going fast and you're like, I just wanted to move through this and be on to the next thing because it's a busy day. And instead you're caught in this cycle, then I know I get a little bit triggered on it and I start to like, just ask.
It's more than me just having, for example, to translate Kat, I'd have to translate another partner and
mm-hmm.
their partner and her partner, and anyone that's a missing link could lead to this like explosion in the polycule where, oh, your boyfriend said this, and having an assumption that they meant something when it was like a guess, or they asked me something. How could they, So I think it's just layers and layers of exponential understanding that's helpful if everybody kind of slows down and
we all understand where everyone's actually coming from.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Great point.
Yes.
So there was a little bit of learning there.
I was like, we went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but I think it's super important discussion. So thank you for diving into that a little bit.
Yeah. A lot of the concepts that he teaches and like shares with people, I found really helpful. And he does share, he's in a book club and he does share a lot of the readings and stuff with me. So I kind of understand what he's talking about.
That's so funny. So I don't want to badmouth other books, but I remember there were 2 books mentioned in the podcast 5 years ago that I'm like now going, those are not the books that would be at the top of our list anymore. But back then, that's kind of all we had. And
there's been an explosion of books.
And so I don't get paid for this, but there are books that have come out since then that I would feel are much more affirming and give much more patience and space for people that are exploring non-monogamy. You probably have already heard of Polysecure.
Mm-hmm.
My book club is like, yes, we like that one. And another one just came out this summer that we like. And it isn't only for the people of the title, but the book is called The Anxious Person's Guide to Non-Monogamy. And it just came out a few months ago. And so far, our book club of therapists who work with kinky and poly non-monogamous kind of world clients, we're like, yeah, we like this one. It's approachable. It's not too preachy. It gives some space. And so we're seeing that a lot now, that there's a lot more compassion and patience given instead of, this is the way you should be non-monogamous. There's a, hey, we're all going to kind of find our way and, give patience with it. And so that I feel has changed. I want to say in 2018, we were about to enter that world of, hey, let's have some kindness and some compassion and patience. And I want to say we entered polyamory where a lot of the discussions were, hey, this is how we should do it. And so I think that is one shift. There's a lot there's a lot more out. There's a lot more podcasts, including yours, that I think are giving people like just, they're going to feel better about themselves, that it's okay to make mistakes and it's okay to kind of learn, and we're not really being preached to on how to do it a certain way.
Yeah.
Podcast, and we still have our social group. It took a break over the pandemic, obviously, because we didn't want anybody trying to socialize with each other. We did have some online social things a couple times during the pandemic. It did take a break, though. We
all got Zoom fatigue.
Yeah, everyone was tired of looking at everybody on screens. But we recently brought it back in person, and it's been pretty popular. We had about 30 something people at our last in-person social discussion group. And it was about, making poly friendships. It wasn't just, specific to dating. And it was really nice.
Yeah.
And we had people from Delaware, people from Virginia coming all the way to Maryland. So it's something people are really looking for, is that social, educational thing right now.
Me setting healthy time boundaries, though, I only have so much time now to help co-facilitate it. So I have a lot more of my friends who are helping out and colleagues helping out run it. And we're only doing events at about half the pace that we used to. It used to be like once or twice a month we'd do something. Now it's like every other month, roughly. So we are slowly getting back into things, but things are at a slower pace than they were 4 years ago. And every other month we have a guest speaker who helps co-facilitate. Like she mentioned, this last one was about, making poly friends. 2 months ago, it was my colleague we did the workshop with, and did one about how your spontaneous or responsive desire can be impacted with polyamory. We have a colleague next month doing one about like different structures and styles of relationships. Later this coming in 2023, we're doing one about safer sex practices by a medical professional. And then we're doing one on compersion. So it's coming back, but at like half the speed of pre-pandemic.
Yeah. It's amazing. And I'm excited that resource is out there. And again, we'll get links and we'll put stuff in the show notes so people in that area can find it. It sounds like it's fairly regional. It's probably going to be, it's not necessarily streamed online or anything, correct?
No, we've talked about that, but it's like for people's privacy right now, we're not streaming it online.
Yep. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Thank you for touching on that. We were going to ask, so we appreciate you you bringing that up too.
And maybe one thing I wanted to kind of bring around is we've talked a lot about things that you've both learned or ways that you've both grown, and almost all, if not all, of the concepts we've talked about are really relevant, not just in non-monogamy, but in really any relationship. It could be a friendship, a family member. And they're really not even relationship concepts. A lot of them are just personal growth, understanding who you are. And I think it's just important to highlight the last time we talked, you were many, many years into non-monogamy and 3 years into polyamory, and still didn't have words for any of these things. And so I think just for anyone listening, like giving yourself a little bit of a break that like, okay, you're 6 months in and you haven't read The Ethical Slut, Poly Secure, More Than Two, every single book under the sun. Unless you're struggling to understand some of these things. And like, we're still struggling. You were struggling after 3 years and now 5 or 6 or 7 years in.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're still learning and growing. So it's, I don't know that there was an exact question other than maybe like, what are some of the personal growth pieces that each of you have come up against and how you've worked through those? Because there's just so much that we've all experienced in the last 4 years.
So there's a book. I have it not in front of me, so I'd have to go find the title. But it's actually a book written by somebody who has a PhD in linguistics. And it's about how to basically use your words and communicate, and it's in a framework of how you would do it with non-monogamy, but the author agrees, and I agree, you can use this with anybody. And the concept they give is you don't learn from just experiencing, You learn from reflecting on your experiences. And they say how you do that, which I try to do. I don't do it as much as I should, but I try to journal. These journals are kind of like the analogy I'll give is like the game film. And if you are an athlete and you have blank tapes instead of actual tapes of your game film, you're not going to keep getting better. Those journals are like my game films that I can go back and reflect on. For me, sometimes the journal is something as simple as writing 1 or 2 sentences in the little notes app in my phone, recording a voice memo safely while I'm driving. Ideally, it's actually me with pen to paper in a handwritten journal. But then I set that aside if I'm kind of stressed out. And then the next day or a week later, I might come back to it and go, what was I thinking there? What do I mean? And that might be stuff that can then be a developed thought I might share in our couples therapy or have a conversation with Kat. So that's something that I know helps me and I try to do. Even myself, I probably should do it more. But I think that's a tool that I probably really wasn't using or didn't understand as much 4 years ago.
And for me, I learned by making mistakes. And I'm like, oh, don't do that again. Or, yeah, that was okay, even though I made a mistake. So I tried the journaling. It wasn't for me. It's not going to be for everybody.
Yeah.
Making the mistake for me is the way that it ingrains in my brain to not repeat that again.
I don't remember where I was in 2018. You might remember, Kat. But I used to be the kind of person, I know definitely before 2018, that if I had a thought in my mind that I wanted to share with Kat, brain, mouth, out to her instantly. I wasn't aware of if she was ready to hear it, if she had just gotten home from work and was frazzled. If I had a thought, I would call her if she wasn't home. Hey, let's talk about this thing. Now I'm like, let me journal it. Let me think about it. Maybe I'm going to sleep on it, look at it the next day, see if she is available, kind of get her consent to talk to her about it and share it with her.
And that's definitely something we worked on in therapy.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I can't always be on like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm not ready for it. And then, even then, when he would have it on his mind, he'd want my answer right away. And I definitely need to marinate on things first before I respond to them. So it wasn't working very well.
And I want to say in 2018, I was either just learning that concept or it was still kind of abstract. Now, it is something that I am comfortable and is my preference. And I would say even Kat has gotten used to me going, I'll get to you later. I'm still kind of thinking about it. That was probably something that she never had heard from me.
Well,
5 years ago.
In the past, if he'd said something like that, I'd be like, I did something wrong. It was right. I messed up. And I would take it on as like this guilt thing. And now I know it's just part of his processing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We may have learned this one as well.
I was like, you two are describing some very close to home things for us.
And yeah, our approach is...
It's not just a poly thing. It's any kind of relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. It totally is. Yeah.
And our piece was recognizing really that we would, especially now both being home and working from home, it was so easy to be like, oh, I have a thought. I'm going to walk out and talk. And then 2 hours later, we're like, uh-oh, we didn't get any shit done today because we just been talking about this thing. And so I like maybe 4 or 5 months ago, I created a Word doc, a shared Google Doc. And we have like a color-coded system where we just say, would like to talk about this thing. And it's a couple of shorthand notes. And then we sort of put a rough timeline like, hey, this needs to be talked about like now, like maybe tonight or tomorrow, or, hey, this is like in the next week or two, we need to touch on this and we need to, bring this up. And so it's a place to store the thoughts and the things that we want to talk about. And we can like give the other person links like, hey, we need to talk about buying flights home for Christmas. Here's some options or here's some screenshots. And we can like put a little bit of information there. And then the other person can show up to the conversation ready, right? Instead of being like me walking out and being like, hey, I'm ready to talk about flights and blah. And she's like, I was reading and doing my job and now I'm trying to look at flights. And so we can come to conversations and be a whole lot more productive, a whole lot faster. So
The whole
It sounds like a slant
very,
on what you're doing.
Google Suite's very helpful for a lot of relationship stuff. You got the calendar, shared docs, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other thing, and so I'm thinking about it, and this was like the other half of the workshop that I learned how it applied to me personally, was understanding that the differences in our desires, spontaneous desire versus responsive desire, wasn't something personal. I definitely 100% would say that. In 2018, I would still have moments where I would take it personally, the discrepancy in desire we had. And now I understand it's just different. But it's almost now, her and I are almost kind of becoming the same in a way, in that I used to be standard stereotypical male spontaneous desire. A breeze blows by and I'm turned on, and I have this spontaneous desire to want to have sex. I see just a picture and I'm like, okay, I'm ready to go. And it took me a while to understand that Kat was more responsive desire, which kind of related to her demisexuality. And I would not understand that, and I would take it personally. Now, and I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, but I almost have one foot in the responsive desire camp. I would say it's almost something that's probably Kat's still getting used to. Me now having more responsive desire. That's probably a new thing.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I appreciate the share. And I was thinking about something that you kind of said way at the beginning, and I meant to ask about it way at the beginning, but here we are because of amazing conversation. So the question is really around, Kat, you had shared at the beginning that you were kind of in a hard place, and things have sort of come to a head. And then the pandemic came and shut the world down. And a lot of, anybody who listens or follows Esther Perel, for example, will understand the value in having time apart is really valuable and really important to keeping things sort of alive and fresh and giving you a perspective, something to talk about, right? If we do everything together during the day, what are we going to talk about at the end of the day? But you two sort of talked about how the pandemic forced you two back closer. And that was possibly the thing that even maybe saved your relationship. And I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about how that worked for you two, and sort of in the, I don't want to say flying in the face of the research and the work that Esther Perel has done, because I think, realistically, everything is on a spectrum of, it's not just this is a hard and fast rule. But I was curious if you two could talk about that for the two of you.
Yeah. I mean, I used to joke that I need to miss you. I need to miss you. You're around too much. You need to, and I think we went too far on that spectrum of maybe making it where the missing was more than ever being around each other. And that led to us growing apart and making it to where, he was making plans to try to create that distance. And it was too many plans. It was over planned. And we weren't planning the time together. So having the pandemic shut everything down, it kind of forced us to confront why we were so far apart at that point, and kind of made us actually talk to each other and really, it forced me to be more open to wanting to be around it. Because what else was I going to do? There wasn't anything else. Right. There wasn't anything else. There wasn't anybody else. And okay, so he also almost died right as the pandemic was beginning. His appendix burst into like a million pieces, and we had to go to the hospital. And yeah,
it was past the point of surgery, so I had to actually be in a hospital the first month of the pandemic for like a week.
And they barely allowed me to be there. So, it was a little nuanced.
Yeah. There was
almost losing him helped a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I'm trying to get my brain back into what I was going to say, was that So I work with a lot of relationships in my work as a therapist, and there are many things what we call green flags, like, hey, you should have these in your relationship. And some of them sometimes can, if you have too much of them, it can be an issue. So 3 of them are, you should have commonality, you should have independence, and you should have balance. Ideally, the balance is you have a balance between the commonality and the independence. And we've always had the potential to have a lot of commonality. And I think as we entered polyamory, we might have overcorrected to a point of having almost too much independence where it was no longer in balance. And so the pandemic forced us almost externally to have more commonalities. We sat at home and baked bread, and she took care of me, and we had bonfires with the kids, and we could not go and do as much of those independent things. And then as we started to come out of the pandemic, we had a lot more awareness of what quality instead of quantity was in both.
Which is a huge point.
which is amazing. And then it sounds like allowed you to come out of the pandemic and letting the world opening back up and maybe maintaining that balance, reintroducing some of that independence, but not to the point where you two felt like you'd lost each other again.
Yeah. We're more like a team now instead of being like just two people who are on the same side of something.
Yeah. And
there's a difference. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah.
There's something that you can Google called the Sternberg triangular theory of love. You'll see this fancy triangle. And the 3 points of this triangle, one is, hey, do we have things in common? Do we like each other? Do we have a commitment? Do we trust each other? And the other corner is, hey, do we have passion? Do we like each other, like in a physical, sexual kind of way? It's really hard to have all 3 points always firing up. But I think it helped us slow down. And for example, I'll not take it personally if we didn't always like all the same things, or we didn't always have the same passion, desire with each other. But I would definitely say in 2017 or 2018, wasn't maybe understanding that as well. And so maybe would take it personally and go, okay, well, I'm going to go be independent and go get some of these corners elsewhere. And I think the pandemic helped us see it with a wider perspective.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say on that too, though, that you can, I imagine, maintain a relationship or even a healthy relationship if one of those corners isn't sort of firing. If you and your partner have had that conversation, like, hey, there isn't, maybe a super raw, passionate desire here, but we really love doing these things, and so our relationship is going to sort of stand on these 2 legs, and we have that mutual understanding that some of these other needs do come from other places, and
or understanding that it takes longer for someone, depending on how their desire functions, to push on the gas pedal, and it just takes time and patience. And then if you throw ask and guess culture in there, knowing, hey, how do we ask for it, or how do I guess how my partner wants to talk to me about that? We there's just so many factors there that we were able to slow down and practice, I would say, during the pandemic.
Yeah. I love it. I was realizing too that we haven't really discussed, I just wanted you to touch on this, what your relationship structure is at the moment. Like what does it look like? I know Kat said you have one of the same partners from 4.5 years ago, but what does it look like for you two at the moment?
Yours has changed.
Yeah. So mine has changed. I realized as we entered and as the pandemic went on, my career became a very significant relationship. Like my doing this job, like I actually have more joy and pour more energy into it now, this retirement part-time job, than my previous 20-year career. So I realized that, hey, I only have so much bandwidth. So I have been very slow and intentional about not trying to offer more, not biting off more than I could chew, so to speak. So for me, I have been very slow this year in building connections that aren't going to like make me go underwater or promise more than I can to somebody else. So right now for me, I would say I don't have like another, if you want to call it anchor, serious consummate partner right now. I would say I have connections that we have an understanding of where each other's boundaries are and where we fit. Do I love the idea of having another deep poly relationship that is consummate and takes up a fair amount of bandwidth and is bringing everybody joy? Yes. I'm just really patient about knowing that, hey, having that ability is a privilege, whether it's having the finances to do that, the time to do that. And I know in myself, I'm not there yet. And so I'm hoping that maybe in a year, I'll have a little bit more free time. I'll be able to put some more energy into those workshops and less energy into my clients during the week. But right now, it's a couple connections that are more manageable and we are on the same page and boundaries and wavelength. But with the hope that one day I have the bandwidth to offer more.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so yeah. But Kat and my work are kind of my primary relationships right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And I love too, I think, one thing you kind of described in the other conversation and even just touched on it here is at the beginning when you opened up to polyamory, it was almost like you had NRE for polyamory. And it was like, I'm going to go on dates with everybody and anybody that I can come up with. And now you've like sort of come around and you're like, well, that was a lot of work. Maybe there's a better way for me to do this.
Yeah. So a lot of my friends were like, what happened to you during the pandemic? Because I kind of became an introvert for about a year and a half. I was like enjoying just staying home. And
he was talking about we're going to move to the country. We're going to move away from everything. And we'll just have our little quiet patch of nothing in the country.
There was a phase
and
where
it's not like him at all.
Yeah, there was a phase where I'm like, let's go off the grid into this quiet wilderness. It was a phase.
And I'm always like, okay, all right, you go ahead and like research that. I know it'll pass.
And so it has passed. And I'm back to being social, but at a measured level.
Yeah.
Knowing that my bandwidth is already deducted with my nest and our kids and work. And hopefully I can have some responsible bandwidth come back in the next year. I definitely am aware of that now, and I'm much more patient about that. And so if I have a friend who wants to go on a date, is interested, I'm like, hey, we're all going to this tiki bar night. You're welcome to join us, but I don't have the energy to like go on a one-on-one date and start another relationship. Whereas the me of 26 and 2017 would have been saying yes to everything. And I would have 6 out of 7 days of the week full in the calendar. And yeah, I understand my own limits now.
Yeah, for sure.
Or you'd plan the date on the same night as the tiki. I can do both. I'll go to the tiki for an hour and then I'll go on it.
I would double and triple book my days where I'm like, hey, I got a date at 10 and I can make a date at 2. And, oh yeah, I can do something at 7. No, I do. And maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but it's like, I'll do one thing a day. At least that's where I am.
You go to run and then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yesterday I did a 5K and then an event. So that was an exception. But I guess for me, I don't want to have multiple days where I feel like I really have to engage and connect with people. I didn't have to connect with anybody very deeply at a 5K, and I have to connect with anybody very deeply that night. So yeah, I definitely realize it's quality, not quantity anymore.
Yeah, getting back to that quality versus quantity, which is, it's so important in all relationships with yourself and with other people to keep that measured and understand, like learn where you're at with that and what your needs are, and then figure that out in your relationship. Because
I think a lot of your the relationships you have now are based more in friendship than on the passion side of things. So I think that's been a nice change too.
Yeah. I would say that, I've just slowed that down. I don't think I used this analogy in our last podcast, but my friends almost call it my middle name, slow s'mores. Is that when people roast marshmallows, some people like to dip it in the fire and it's exciting and it burns and it's fast, but it's kind of maybe cold in the middle, and they can have a bunch and they're fast. And I joke that my preference is to take my time on the edge for a few minutes so it gets really golden brown. My friends are burning up and eating 3 s'mores, but I'm taking my time. I prefer that, but I understand not everybody has that patience to do that.
Yeah. And how about you, Kat? You're still seeing the same person from 4.5 years ago. Where are you at, I guess, in your relationship?
It hasn't changed much. They've moved. They were within 20 minutes, and now they've moved to the DC area. So it's become a little more complicated to see them, but I still have the commitment of once a week seeing them. And then the other person, I just started seeing them on occasion. It's definitely not a deep connection. It's not a regular thing or anything. We do talk a lot, but it's a shallow, very shallow kind of, connection.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a lot of my bandwidth. It doesn't require a lot out of me. The one long-term relationship, I would say that there is definitely more there, but it's not a anchor kind of partner kind of relationship either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing that I have taken up I don't even want to call it post-pandemic. Are we ever going to be post-pandemic? But I have taken up, it used to be something that has always been a little side thing over the years, but never something that I really invest a lot of time in, is kink. So I've always been, I would say, kink adjacent. But now it's like, hey, this is really something that I want to go do. And I would really say comfortable that it's an independent thing, not 100% Kat's bag, but she supports me in that. And I would say years ago, I would have been, oh, I only want to do this at the pace that Kat wants to do it, because this is something we should do together. And now I feel really comfortable going, okay, I'm going to go do this thing. And I know you may like this thing and this thing, but not this thing and this thing. And I feel we're much more comfortable having our own independent interests now than we did 4 or 5 years ago.
And I'm lazier than you, so.
Hey, you're sitting on the beltway to...
I'm definitely much more of a homebody than he is.
Right.
So, I mean, but there was a time that I would tell him yes to everything because I didn't want to. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I didn't want to disappoint him. But I've gotten more comfortable saying no.
Yeah.
Well, but a lot of that is really tied into boundary work, right?
Mm-hmm.
The ability to
circling back to boundaries.
Well, which is also tied into just you getting right with yourself. The ability to say, hey, no, you go do that. I'm not going to go do that. But I understand that you'll probably be coming back afterwards and we'll be okay, versus I'm going to agree to go do something that I don't want to do and build up resentment and put this in the bag that I can use against you. Well, I went to that kink event and now you get to come do this thing that you don't want to do, instead of being like, hey, have a good weekend or have a good night. I'll see you in the morning and I'm excited to see you and we'll cook pancakes for breakfast or whatever it is. At the quality of it.
And we are still a work in progress. We still help host maybe once every other month at the local lifestyle club by our house. We're still friends with the owner, and we do it because we're social, and we'll bring friends because it's a place where we all can get away from the kids and the family and be at this dance club that has a BYOB bar in it and has playrooms. And so for us, it's more about the setting. We rarely would go there to meet strangers, so to speak. But the process is, I used to be such an asker that now sometimes I maybe even overcorrect and go, I don't want to ask Kat for something because my default is she's going to feel uncomfortable saying no. So for now, I'm just kind of chill about it. And so sometimes she'll have to be like, hey, like, aren't you going to ask me?
Yeah. No, I'm not. Why? Do you want something? How about you ask?
and then then I read her guess going, oh, okay, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's
Well,
from being together for 20 years.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. When you have that long-term relationship too, for sure. Like yeah.
Which makes the asking and guessing, right? And it is almost, I mean, she kind of knows that I know, but we're also in this place of we're working on the communication. And so, yes, I do know what you want, but can you ask for it? And can I meet you? Yes, I can meet you, and we can get there together. But we're both pushing each other in ways that we never have before. And part of it is we didn't have language around a lot of this.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just like, she just doesn't want to go do this thing because she's not asking, instead of understanding like how our brains are different. And that takes apparently 17 or more years of relating together.
Yeah. No, even to this day, there will be times where she might be uncomfortable still saying no. Or she might not realize that if she says no, I'll be like, okay. Because just as recently as maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I might have had this low-key pouty face or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and to tie that again back to boundaries,
Yeah.
now Kat knowing that if she says no, that you're okay maybe going and doing something on your own, saying no is a whole lot less scary because you're not going to, one of you is not going to do something that you don't want to do and cause resentment, and you're okay saying, oh no, great, we can still both do the things we want to do. Your no doesn't mean a no for EJ.
And I had to do a lot of work on resentment because I would say, and it is a lot of work in therapy. So it's not something I did on my own at all.
Yeah.
Great point.
We have the benefit of 20 years of experience, and then sometimes the curse of 20 years, sometimes of little mistakes.
Yes.
Or big ones.
Yeah. And the resentment that builds up on both of you for different reasons, and you having to like tear that down and go to the foundation and be like, okay, this isn't working. We got to understand these things and try to do this differently.
Which is a reminder sometimes for people that are exploring non-monogamy is that, and it's mentioned in that Polysecure book, check how safe your safe harbor is. Because sometimes if you both are off doing your own things, you're just kind of sweeping some things under the rug and you're both happy off in your own corners. And then you might lose your balance.
Which we totally did.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, we totally did.
Yeah.
We had no balance. So thanks, pandemic.
Yeah, there were some benefits to the pandemic, I would say,
perspective.
Perspective. Yeah, that's probably the biggest benefit. Yeah, for sure.
Well, this has been amazing. Of course, thank you both. We could talk, I'm guessing, for many more hours, but we wanted to be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to get out into the world today before we let you go? And EJ, I know you've talked a bit about your work. Is there a way people can find you and learn more if they're interested or have more questions?
Sure. Well, what I will mention is that the workshop that the two of you just attended, my colleague and I are going to be repeating it on February 11th. It's, I believe, still going to be at 9 a.m. East Coast time, and it's online. And then we're unveiling a level 2 workshop April 1st. Those are both Saturday mornings, East Coast time. And I can get you the link that you can put.
It's for couples, for individuals. It's for...
Yeah, we got some really good feedback. Some people were really happy. And we try to create as safe a space as we can for both monogamous and non-monogamous, or people who are questioning. And so we're hoping to continue that. That is something that gives me energy. I don't feel drained after those. My colleague and I were both really excited and actually went out to tiki drinks and kind of celebrated with friends that, hey, we're really happy. This was our second iteration. And that would be that. And as far as the Mid-Atlantic here, the group that meets every other month, that you could still find if you use FetLife. And I believe it is pods, PODS, hyphen Maryland. And that is kind of an access for people. It's more public. And then if they want, they can get more details from their message there if they want to access the secret unlisted for people's privacy Facebook group.
It's a very welcoming
Is the only way to get in there through FetLife for I guess for anybody who's maybe interested in poly but doesn't really want to create a FetLife account? Or interested in non-monogamy?
So the next meeting, which is going to be in January. Let's see. I don't know if this will have aired by then, but
it'll probably be in mid to late January. So we'll get it out right before the other workshop.
Okay. They meet every other month. The next one will be March 6th. In March 6th, it meets in Columbia, Maryland at there's a place called Union Jacks. And it's 6:30 p.m. East Coast is when it starts in person. But the first hour is like mingling. Then there's an hour of conversation. And then people are mingling after. The March 6th one is going to be about safer sex. And we have a healthcare professional who has come to all of our events for the last 5 years, giving this every year. They update it on the latest and greatest. And they're going to even have updates on how COVID can affect people's sexuality and what are the things you want to ask your doctor when you want to get an STI screening. And so they update it because things change science-wise every year or so. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be the next one.
Awesome. Well, information for all of that will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much. And yes, just a quick plug. We did attend your intimacy workshop this weekend and it was fantastic. So we would encourage anyone listening to attend the next one. And
a lot of the things that we talked about today are covered in that. And this wasn't even an intentional I guess it was serendipitous that this conversation went the way it did. So.
When my colleague and I helped create the content, we intentionally created the content. I'm like, what are the foundational things that people need to understand? I came at it from understanding your partner's communication culture, and my colleague came at it from understanding the nature and nurture of desire and sexuality, and how bringing those two together can kind of create a bridge. So it was definitely a nice collaboration that you both got, and I appreciated the feedback and the interactions. We didn't have to do all the talking. We really enjoyed how everybody got to learn from everybody's perspective, including yours.
Yeah, it was great. So thank you for doing that work and for coming back on.
Is there anything else that you guys would like to mention before we let you go?
No, thank you so much for having us again. It's been great.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. And we're back.
Oh, nailed it. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
That was fun, right? Too soon? We've killed that joke, Emma. You gotta let it go.
It's an ongoing joke.
You gotta let it go, though.
Thank you so much, EJ and Kat, for coming on again a second time, 4.5 years later, almost 5 years. We were so excited to talk to you and love the updates and love the conversation. Just a quick reminder, go check out the intimacy workshops that EJ is co-hosting with Rachel. They're coming up on February 11th or on April 1st. And links to sign up are in the show notes. Go check them out.
Check it out. We also have a virtual meet and greet tomorrow. That's January 19th. So you're going to want to not miss that. Definitely don't miss it.
No, come join us. We'd love to have you.
And next weekend, the weekend of January 28th, we are doing an in-person community retreat for anybody who is a member of our virtual community. They get to come and be part of it in person. So there is more information posted on our website. Again, all of this stuff, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. You'll find your way around.
Yeah.
We believe in you.
Yeah.
And next week, we have an amazing conversation
with Casey. So come back in a week and listen then.
Can I share why I think this one's so amazing?
Go for it.
Because the topic is hot wifing.
Mm-hmm.
And one would think, oh, it's just one of those. But it is so deep. it's like very little about hot wifing and sex and so much about relationship and the journey that Casey and her partner went on together.
Yeah, it's an amazing conversation.
And that's not to assume that all people who do hot wifing are just shallow, vapid beings.
Oh my gosh. You're like digging yourself a hole.
I'm digging out of the hole.
And you're trying to get out of the hole. But I feel like you're just digging further.
I'm digging out of the hole to say that this conversation blew my mind and I loved it, and so I'm really excited for it. That was the whole point.
It is. It was amazing, and we're excited to get it out there next week.
Next week should be fun.
And I think that's it. Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.